Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Monday, October 14th work session. We'll start the meeting with the roll call.
Mayor Garitano,
Present.
Councilmember Brost, Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Oh, here.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Preston,
Here.
Councilmember Mabry,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Crayons, Councilmember Albers.
All right, thank you for that. Again, good evening to everyone. Great to see you all. Last time I think we met was, or at least for some, we had Celebrate Wildwood, which was a fantastic event. So thank you to our staff, to the Celebrate Wildwood Commission for all the work on that great event. They're celebrating our 29th anniversary. We'll start with four information items. So looking at the work session agenda, if there are any questions, comments pertaining to the four information items, we'll entertain those right now. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, I'm guessing Joe will answer these questions. Because they're on the point of Villages of Brightleaf. So they're taking out 6 grand trees, correct? They're removing 6 grand trees.
Spam.
What are they replacing them with?
They will replace them in accordance with the formula under the new regulations in the Tree Preservation and Restoration Code. So, for example, if they take out a 24-inch diameter grand tree, they have to replace it with 8 3-inch diameter trees of a species of the city selection.
Because if I'm reading the landscape plan right, I didn't see the replacement of that many grand trees. Could be me. So
they will be required. Now, the benefit these days is we now have an arborist on staff, and Mr. Walsh does an excellent job. And what we're finding is he's bringing a little different set of species to the table, natives, but those that are better suited for here that for years we didn't necessarily identify as appropriate. And he does a good job working with the developers, the property owners, to get a nice combination out on the ground. So I'm confident
nice
we'll
to
get,
have. Yeah.
yes, very much so.
Yeah. And then they gonna plant trees along the trail.
That is the intent.
I'm getting some questions, so that's
Sure.
what I'm going down here. What amenities are they going to be contained within the development?
Primarily, the amenities are the pedestrian network. Again, just the interconnectedness of the development to what's already existing.
And that meets the required square feet for public space.
Yes.
Let's see. Are berms being used for sound mitigation?
It's a very good question, and we haven't delved into it to the extent we will, because as you know, we're working on the zoning process and heading toward site development plan. There will be sound mitigation efforts in place, primarily in conjunction with the homes. But again, it's easier. Some mass, a berm, a wall makes an incredible amount of difference relative to just the surrounding area. So I don't have a good answer for you, but it is something that's on the radar.
I knew you were using different materials to make it a little quieter.
Yeah.
On the inside. And it looked about the density, and it looked like planning and zoning went back to 34.
That's correct. They confirmed their previous action, which was to support 34 lots with homes on the 8+ acre site. That will be back before you at the next meeting in November.
And then, so the vote was 6-3. So just in a really brief short snippet, Why did the three people who wanted to remain at 30 homes, what was their rationale?
I can't speak for all three, but I think Commissioner Jackson kind of spoke to the group and basically said that they recognized that the commission was a necessary step to get back to the city council. And regardless of its action, that being the commission, the city council has to make the final determination. So either way, a yes vote or no vote would have forwarded the report to city council. One, if it's favorable, ends up at a public hearing unless Mr. Young tells me differently. The other, if it's a denial, it's a receipt and file, and you, as the city council, can take no action and nothing proceeds forward. So in some regard, a favorable vote at least brings it to the floor without having the city council to take an affirmative action.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay, Councilmember Mavry.
Just follow up to what I just immediately to be a pretty valid insight from Councilmember Kitchen. That the commission has restated its affirmation. We've provided a unaffirmation to a lower amount and given a reason. And that is building right up to the last inch of the boundary. And what is perceived as a clear encroachment on an otherwise everybody else in the city's access and use of the pathway. What has the commission done to acknowledge the validity of the council's prior concern and made that a part of their decision, or have they? It sounds like they're being silent on that.
Well, 3 of the 9 members in attendance that night affirmed what the city council did, basically voted against the additional 4 lots and home.
What if anything did the majority do to assuage our concerns or dismiss them?
Well, the applicant, the petitioner, however you want to describe them, provided an updated landscape plan and added landscaping in the location, in those locations of the 4 lots that seemed to be the focus of the discussion and ultimately led to the reduction. And so from that perspective, they provided additional information to, I assume, help support their argument for the return of those 4 lots.
Is there anything, and this is before it comes to us, just wondering, I don't want to waste another month. I don't want to do that to a developer. Something more expedient and effective could be provided. No jockeying about with the lots placements or sizes, no physical changes to address the council's concerns if we came in the form of landscaping.
I think from the perspective of the department, that being Ms. Ripito, Mr. Newberry, and then of course, Mr. Brown from Department of Public Works, I think we can offer some suggestions. Again, I'm not adverse to density. Density within town center is
Either.
anticipated.
Yep.
But I can assure you that when we did the review of the preliminary development plan before it went to zoning, 4 lots stood out to us as well. And we think we have some solutions, and we'll offer those long before it comes back to you, either in the form of a public hearing or not necessary
Okay.
in the letter itself.
Councilmember McCutcheon's commented, you're on it. Okay.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gross.
Yeah, I guess one note is like, I don't hear so well, so if you could speak toward the mic would be better. I think the one thing that I'd like to point out, and being on planning and zoning, and I say this with all due respect to the council, but I believe we went from 34 to 30 without any definitive information. I think it was an emotional decision, might be the correct decision, but I don't know if we moved there based on whether it was a recommendation from the city or specific information. So that's why I voted yes back toward the 34, because I think if we're going to deny something, I think we need to give all due respect to the other side and state our reasons why. And I don't think they should be arbitrary. I 100% agree that we have erosion issues in Wildwood, but I'm not sure 30 versus 34 is going to move the needle. So I just offer that. So I just want to say that. Plus, when you, like, Bob, if you don't mind, I couldn't hear you. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, just go ahead and you
Sure.
might want to adjust the microphone so you speak directly into it.
Sure.
And again, just a reminder, we're in for information. So, this is time for seeking clarity. But if we get into any kind of debate, it'd be
Short
best that
short and
we,
sweet.
Yep.
Yes, the 100% concern. The 100% concern was immediately, and it still is, the 0-foot lot line setback from what looked like the property boundary, not the 20 or 30 or 40-foot building setback from the property line, but the 0-foot property setback. And it was crabbing right up to within 1 inch of what was legally allowed when it clearly looked like it was as close an encroachment, a legal encroachment as possible. I sort of wondered why our concern wouldn't be taken as a constructive challenge to the developer. Get inventive and figure out how to lop the corner off those offending points, nearly stabbing the path, the walk path, and do some other property jockeying to answer that concern, which is still the same concern. It had nothing to do with erosion or noise. It was just purely the access of all the residents of Wildwood to the fullest benefit of that path.
So I that's a great explanation, and I think the department could probably provide an answer to that. Yeah, I don't want encroachment. I don't want any of that either. So, but that would be a good question. But I don't recall that. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And I think that's one that could be answered. Thanks.
do we have anyone else that wishes to bring up an item under the for information section? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to for action. We have several items here. The first item on the agenda is an executive closed session, that is A. And given that we do have several attendees here who may be here for other items, I would respectfully ask if we could move the executive closed session, the order of it, to the last item under for action. And that way we can move on to the next item, which would be B. So is that a motion? Okay, and motion for that made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Marshall. And Councilmember McCutcheon? Oh, we do have a second already, Councilmember Marshall. So I don't see any other discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstain? Right, that motion passes. Then we're moving to change the order of the agenda there. So the next item would be B for the City Council, the Latitude North 38. I'll ask Director Vunich to come up and provide an update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, as you recall, at the last meeting on September 9th, there was a discussion relating to this particular project. At that discussion, I think one of the items that the council spent a great deal of time discussing was the request of the petitioners to have relief to the cost of Main Street. As you know, Main Street is a major town center arterial that'll provide a connection from its terminus here in front of City Hall to Etherton Road to then Route 109. In the memorandum letter that's been prepared for your consideration tonight, the city administrator and the Department of Planning did meet with the applicants, petitioners, and went through the numbers associated with Main Street. Main Street does have a significant price tag associated with it relative to this particular frontage. And as part of that, the departments offered the developers petitioner three options. One was, what number of lots would you need if you were to construct all of the required Main Street in the front along the site's frontage? The second option related to relief to the traffic generation assessment fee, a credit, so to speak, with that fund or funds going toward the construction of Main Street. And then finally, in most instances, the city only requires a maximum of 20 feet of land area to be dedicated for either existing streets or new streets. In this particular case, to create the appropriate alignment between a 104-foot wide right-of-way on the east end of Main Street to a 70-foot wide right-of-way on the west end of Main Street, 40 feet is needed to be dedicated by this particular developer petitioner. The department provided the option of assessing that additional 20 feet and the cost that that ground would incur if it were to be purchased by the city. So all told, three options were presented. The developers, petitioners responded back and noted that the intent of on their part would be to construct the streetscape along the frontage from the curb toward the homes. That would include, in the opinion of the department, the curb, the sidewalk, the street trees, street lights, street signs, etc. Again, minus the street, the actual driving surface. Their additional accommodation would be to provide a one-time payment of $125,000 toward the construction of the street. Together, that would ultimately create the streetscape, the walkable portion of it, and provide funds to the city for its ultimate construction. The city would take a charge, so to speak, for the additional right-of-way it's requesting, and that would not be a payment to them. It would be just part of us, the city, building the road at some future point. That would be an additional $105,000 to the fund that would be set aside in our capital improvements. The traffic generation assessment fee component, that's the credit, and we've credited these before. We credited Main Street and Main Street Crossing, ultimately get the 70-foot right-of-way and the improvements we have there. The confirmation that's needed on this particular item is that if the credit is granted, will that credit toward the construction of the improvements of Main Street? And in this case, the street or the streetscape. And so again, before you tonight is a response from the developers petitioners noting that it is not their intent to pay no monies toward Main Street. The monies that will be contributed are actual construction costs for the streetscape, the walkable portion, $125,000, and then again, the potential credit of $158,000 from the TGA, not being a one-time payment to the city, but being directly put into the Main Street construction. Also, I will just add and conclude with the intent and the requirement of the proposed conditions is that Etherton Road be fully constructed along petitioner developer's frontage. So that's another cost or infrastructure that's associated with the project. Hopefully, the department has provided options that are reasonable in the opinion of the city council. The responses from the developers have been provided, and this Department of Planning is seeking direction in terms of next steps. Thank you.
Councilmember Krantz.
Hey, Joe. You're not recommending 55 homes, are you?
The 55 home lot plan is a vast improvement over the series of submittals that the department has seen. The direction the department was given to in preparation of the conditions was 53 or 55 The department's just seeking direction from city council at this stage.
You said in your report that 53 is where you want to be. Are you still there? Or are you changing your mind?
Well, certainly 53 was the direction city council gave to the Department of Planning in preparing the draft conditions. If 55 lots were to basically facilitate the development of Main Street, I hope city council would consider it.
Now, I always thought that the developer should do their portion of the street along their development. And they're obligated to do 12 feet of driving surface. That's all they need to do is 12 feet, correct?
Well, I would probably say in this case, it's a minimum of 13 feet, if not a little bit more, to get a width of 26 feet, which is the standard for a residential street, not necessarily an arterial. But what we're trying to do here, Mr. Kranz, is just make the connection so that we can have traffic come both ways.
Right. Well, this is going to get down to money.
Yes, sir.
So they are obligated to do the Main Street crossing, and you just indicated they don't want to do anything on Main Street. Is that correct?
Well, again,
Except for the $125,000?
and build the streetscape along the frontage.
But that comes with it, doesn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
obviously, when you increase the density on a property and obviously increase the utilization, there have to be corresponding improvements to ensure that that increase in utilization is safe and functional. And that's usually.
Are
the
we
construction of streets.
asking them to do something extra?
Well, what I would say is beyond the extra 20 feet of dedication, we are asking them to build 1/2 of a 70-foot
I'm only asking them to build the 12 to 13 feet. And do you know how much that would cost for them to do that street along their development? It's 400 and some feet, I know that. How much is the cost for them to build 12 feet of driving surface, which they are obligated to build?
Well, the overall cost is over $800,000 for the frontage, and I would probably ask Mr. Brown to provide an assessment just for the driveway if he can.
I think it's more closer to 850, but let's just use $800,000. Of which, how much are they going to pay? $125,000 of that?
The $125,000 is a one-time payment to the city, and then they will construct the streetscape along the frontage of the
Okay.
property. That cost will probably be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But that's something they have to do. And I'm talking about Main Street, Joe. And so the TJ money, they want to use $185,000 toward Main Street, right?
Well, there is a requirement that ultimately $158,000 through TGA assessments will be provided to the city. The city can credit those.
Yeah, but the city will be paying that, right? Since
Well,
if
that's,
they don't pay it, we pay it, right?
well, certainly if the developer doesn't pay it, then the city pays it.
Okay, so that's the cost we're gonna pay. And then they want $105,000 for the other half of the easement. And I'm not sure how they calculate that cost. Because the only interest in that piece of property would be the city. Anyway, so that $105,000 that we choose to buy that goes toward the payment for Main Street, right?
I view the $105,000 as a subtraction from the overall cost of $850,000.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. So when I do the math here, so you're looking at 185, you're looking at 125, and you're looking at 105. I think that comes out to $388,000 for their portion of Main Street. And if it's $800,000, they're paying for only half, basically. And the taxpayer, it's not our development to pay for the street. You know, they're asking the taxpayers of Wildwood to pay for that street. Half of that street. And I recall McBride was told they had to pay for their portion. Is that correct?
Yes, but they
Okay.
had a substantially less portion of it. Their dedication was 10 feet and
Good.
same requirements though, 1/2 of a 70-foot wide right of way.
You know how much that cost was? Do you remember?
I do not, and as we know, McBride Homes withdrew from the project.
Okay. This isn't a very good counter offer, but that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Councilmember Brost.
Yep. Do we have like something like this that would show the layout should the development not proceed?
Well, CDI is working on engineered plans that would ultimately be biddable. They're not complete yet, but for the most part, this design that you see before you is relatively close, meaning that it's 2 drive lanes, a grass median to match what's on both sides of existing Main Street. Some of the changes that you should anticipate are along the Village Green. Parallel parking spaces don't work very well for our accessibility requirements. And there may be some alteration in the breaks in the medians and where curb cuts fly. But all in all, I think it's relatively close in that we create the transition from 104 feet of right of way to 70 feet of right of way. And it aligns on the west end almost perfect.
And then is there any cost estimate on that?
That's the cost estimate we received from CDI in advance of the preparation of the packet, and that's that $800,000+ number.
So if the project doesn't go forward, we're looking at 800-ish. If it goes forward, we're looking at half of that.
Well, that's just the cost for this particular portion of Main Street. The overall cost is almost $4.9 million. Half of that, well over half of that is the undergrounding of utilities, which quite frankly, I don't see how we can do a project that would ultimately end up with support for paying almost $2.5 million to underground utility line. We had that same kind of issue on Manchester Road when we were doing the streetscape. We ended up taking into cross wires over Manchester Road away, but we kept the utility lines above ground.
Councilman, do you have anything else, Councilmember Brost, or, okay, Councilmember Edens?
I just want to make sure I understand everything. So under option 3, the reason why you're saying we're accepting a charge, but we're not paying the developer directly for the $105,000 is because we're now accepting responsibility for that portion. So it adds to our total overall costs of improvement to the area. So that is the $105,000 we would expect to pay the construction firm to fix that. Is that correct?
It's a subtraction from their obligation because we're getting not just 20 feet of land dedication for the future right of way, we're getting double it.
Okay, subtraction from the obligation.
Yeah.
All right, okay, okay.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, so what it sounds to me like is the city's going to be paying more for the development installation of Main Street than the developer is. Is that correct?
Regardless of this project, I think ultimately the city's going to pay more than the developers. It's a project that's been on our radar for the better part of a decade, if not more. We've made offers to property owners over the course of time. Most of them said, I don't want to sell you right away. I'll sell you the whole entirety of the property. We don't need 3 acres. We need 40 feet or 20 feet, whatever the distance was. If the projects go away, we're left with a village green that does not have necessarily vehicular access from the west. And we're dealing with not just a developer on the south side, but we're dealing again now with the lots on the north side. So we factor in more people in the equation, so to speak, which is already what we've been doing. So again, it's a city council decision in terms of, do we want to jumpstart Main Street and see if we can at least get a portion of it constructed to create the connection? And from perspective of Village Green, make it more accessible. And then from the perspective of economic development, make it easier for people to access our downtown area of town center? Or do we wait?
But we have a street there, so Village Green can be accessed. There's already a street there, correct?
It's a private street. And again, the city owns 2/3 or 2 of the 13 lots. But we don't have the right to say it's a public street. We can use it, but the general public can't.
Is there a way around that?
I would defer to our city attorney.
Would you mind repeating the question just so I'm clear on it?
He said we can't use Main Street as it exists because it's a private street,
Correct,
even though the city owns a portion of it.
correct.
And so I said, is there any way to make that a public street?
The only way to make it a public street is to acquire it by negotiation or eminent domain.
With the families that are there presently.
Each of the property owners that own up to the center line, I believe they own up to the center line.
And then one of my concerns, other than the dollar amount, and I know this is a project dear to your heart, that you guys have been working on this for a long time. I mean, it's a significant cost to the taxpayers. And then we've already denied other developers, the ability to, for lack of another word, make a deal on the extension of the street. And now if we turn around and do that for this developer, my fear is we're opening a can of worms. And if we do it for one, then somebody's going to come and say, well, they did it for, Latitude and 38. So why aren't you going to do it for me? So that's other than the cost, that's my concern, is it's going to start like a domino effect. And then in the long run, it's going to cost the city a lot of money to do that.
I concur. Main Street will be an expensive infrastructure project regardless of who does it. It's a combination of private and public. I don't know. All I will tell you is that with Main Street Crossing, city did a development agreement with Payne Family Homes to ensure that we got the connection out to Route 109. The existing section of Main Street through downtown that serves City Hall, that was part of an agreement as well in terms of obtaining the land for the construction of the street, Coleman Properties and Greenberg Development. Ultimately, TGA credits were granted to Greenberg Development, not only for the street, but the donation of the land that City Hall was constructed on. And going all the way back to Beerberg's Town Center, we credited TGA for the construction of that street on Route 100 south of Manchester Road. Previous city councils have worked with the development community to get expensive infrastructure improvements completed.
So how's that going to work, Joe? If part of it's a private street, and we have, say, the city comes up with the funding to go ahead and, make the extension, how's that going to work? If the developer donates a portion of it, we've got a public or a private street, and then the city puts in X amount of dollars, how's that going to work?
It can work. It's not going to be optimum or advantageous. We'll have to control access to Crestview Drive by a simple gate. It'll have a passcode for the owners that are served by it. We'll have two simple drive lanes next to an elaborate streetscape on the south side if the project moves forward. And ultimately, we'll just continue forward to trying to negotiate with the property owners or wait for a development to basically complete Main Street for all intents and purposes, similarly to that which is in Main Street Crossing, the residential subdivision. Again, if city councils can approach development agreements, development incentives. We don't offer financial incentives, and that's in our master plan, and we adhere to that. But we've certainly, over the course of time, recognized that certain streets are so expensive that some assistance from the city for the betterment of the community, not necessarily to the detriment, is in its best interest.
I have one more question.
Sure.
So if we put a gate there and it remains, part of it remains a private street, how is that helping access the village green?
Again, this makes the assumption that the project before you tonight moves forward. We have $1 million set aside in 2025 for city construction of a portion of Main Street. So as I mentioned, we would have a simple 2-lane road that would make the connection until such time we have more right of way and more funding to do the rest.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
And I have a couple of more council members that have asked to speak. I'll just go through the list here. Council members Dodwell, Marshall, and Edens. So Councilmember Dodwell, you're up.
Just real quickly, Joe, or maybe this is better for Rick. Have we ever gotten free reign on any street that we've ever dealt with before?
Well, other than the TGA credit for Taylor Road,
Mm-hmm.
Deerberg's Markets and Greenberg Development carried the entirety of that. Mr. Cohn could get up during public participation during the regular session and tell you that I think he paid over $500,000 for a half-acre lot to make the connection of Taylor Road on its southern end at Manchester Road. Property owner knew that he had the leverage and he certainly exercised it.
Okay, so we're asking, we're being asked by what I would consider partners within the city of Wildwood to help extend a roadway that has been basically left alone for the last 40 years, and work towards improvements, right?
Yes.
I personally don't see that as an affront to city council and asking to partner with us, making sure that we get our business community and our town center pulled together the way we had laid it out 25 years ago or so. So I will be voting that we move forward with this agreement with Latitude so that we can get the project moving forward. And as we walk down the road in the next 5 years, 10 years, and individuals who own property on the north side sell off, then we can ask that developer who develops it to pick up that side of the road as much as they can or as much as they're willing to, and the city will do the same. But I think we're nickel and diming on things right now, and I don't see a benefit to the residents for their ability to get to town center from some of the communities that we have authorized putting in west of the town center. And we want to make sure that this new Village Green is available to everyone as easily as possible. So I think we need to move forward with this.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes, Mr. Vunich did a nice history lesson. But I remember when this was the Hinkle Farm. We had no streets. We had no Deerberg. They had $1.4 million in cash they wanted right away. But this is how we did Main Street. So, I don't think this is unusual. It's the fact that when you're trying to take a wide piece of property for multiple developers, this is what we did several years ago for Main Street and for Taylor, and to use those funds to improve that roadway in order to do it. So considering it's Main Street, I just think this is the way that we as a city can use those TGA funds most appropriately to build out those the infrastructure within town center. Thank you.
Councilmember Edens.
Couple thoughts and then I'll end with a question. The reason why I wanted to clarify number 3 is also because I was thinking of some situations when I first came on the council, which was when we did the Manchester streetscape development. So one of the things I turned into a bit of a, I'll say Scrooge about, was in it, and I understood the reasoning for it. As the city came along, we were trying to be good neighbors. It decreased paperwork for us, for the property owners, and we beautified and improved the city in an expedient way that made sense. What I had noticed at the time was that if we would have often bought the right, like the easement outright, it would have been less than the cost of the improvements that we did. So just using random numbers as an example, if it would have cost us $10,000 to buy that strip of land, did it really make sense to do a $40,000 property improvement for the, quote, donation of this private land? And was that a good deal for taxpayers? So I've kind of already gone on record saying that and backed myself into a little bit of a corner. So it's not unreasonable if I was willing to purchase easements before to accept a deduction from the obligation. Do I think it's a little high? Yeah, probably. I'm just doing the mental math of the areas that I know that we improved before on those properties, and in exchange for dedication of that easement, the quote donation, and adding up the ones that I remember from when I first got on council, I am pretty confident it exceeded that number that's proposed for us tonight. So I feel like it's been done before. And our attorney, in response to a question by Councilmember McCutcheon, to bring up other avenues, which included eminent domain. And I've been sitting here, trying to do the mental math of what that would cost the taxpayers in terms of negotiating with all of the frontage owners in the future, what that would look like in terms of legal fees, and whether or not, I can die on a hill because I think it makes a good emotional argument, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily the best financial argument for the city. And so I'm not sure if this isn't still the cheaper option than other options that we have. And maybe that's, more of a closed session discussion. But if this, I don't want to, shoot a foot just to spite myself for something that isn't a good deal for anybody and gets no construction done whatsoever, if it's going to cost more in legal fees another way, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't know if there's a way to get more information about that at a different time.
With the permission of the mayor, maybe the request of the department tonight is not necessarily anything other than authorization for the city attorney to prepare a development agreement based upon the parameters that have been discussed tonight in the letter, as well as the comments from city council. Provide the development agreement to the development entity, and that's where negotiation can start. Because quite frankly, the numbers you see before you tonight are not negotiated numbers. Those are just the numbers that were done by simple math, the TGA amount versus the number of parking spaces, et cetera.
We have two more council members. I believe Councilmember Farmer, and was that Councilmember Mabry that wished to speak? And just to keep an eye on time, we do have about 15 more minutes left in the work session. So we have a couple of other items that we need to go through. So Councilmember Farmer.
So I don't know if this is Joe or Rick, but how many How many parcels of land are we talking about total for that green strip of road?
On the south side, there are 5. 3 of them are owned by the development entity, PB
Yep.
Realty Development Benton Homes. And I believe there's 8 on the north side.
And the city owns 2
2.
of the 5. So what is the plan? Like, I guess I'm a little confused. I assume that like the little notch in the middle there is that an entrance into the new development?
Yes.
So if we don't, I mean, if we don't get the easements on the other side, how does that road get built?
Again, the developers petitioners are agreeable to dedicating up to 40 feet. That 40-foot dedication will accommodate a simple road and the streetscape on the south side of that southern lane.
Right? Is that a 2-lane road?
Yes.
So then we don't need the rest of the easements?
Well, the 2-lane road will lack the character of Main Street that we have through Main Street Crossing, and it'll not have the median in the middle for safety purposes. It's a stopgap, it's a temporary approach, but it is the connection I think everybody has talked about for years.
So I guess my question is, it sounds like for what I assume would be, if we were to agree to this, the foreseeable future, we will have a slightly better version of the road that we currently have there. And then we'll get to, at some point, either rip that up or add the other half of it. But I guess I'm kind of perplexed as to if we didn't have the village green there, how would people get in and out of that neighborhood? If we weren't talking about building this road all the way through, how would people do that?
Well, over the course of time, there's been variations in this plan, and one of those variations actually had the access point further to the west, closer to the intersection of Etherton Road and Main Street. So only a small portion of, let's say, Main Street, the new Main Street, would be necessary. And then they've always shown an access point to Etherton Road. The current conditions that were requested by City Council preclude access to Etherton Road until such time that it's improved from, for the most part, from the intersection to Manchester Road.
So is the plan, once these buildings are built, are they fixing Etherton Road?
The portion along their frontage, they'll be required to do all of the improvements just as Main Street Crossing did.
Okay. And then how much does that leave for us to do to connect it together
The line-
to Manchester, not to Crestview?
the line share of it, but we are reviewing a plan for 9 lots on a 3-acre parcel on the east side of Etherton Road, just north of Manchester Road. Will require road improvements or escrow there. So incrementally, as development occurs, we will get additional right-of-way and hopefully improvements. And then we looked at the overall improvement several years ago and do have a strip map showing what that improvement would entail.
We don't, at the moment, we don't have any easements or anything basically in either direction other than the 2 we have here at the end of the street.
We do have 40 feet of right-of-way, not the optimum width. And there are bits and pieces of additional dedication and easements, but nothing that would allow us to do the roadway improvements shown on the strip map.
So, okay, and then this is my last thing. So let's assume that this project goes through and it is built by next year, which is probably hard to do, but let's pretend. How are those people getting in and out of that neighborhood?
Well, occupancy wouldn't be granted to any unit until the connection's made from the temporary Main Street to the east. And Main Street to the west is already in place, which would be to Route 109.
And what about on Crestview?
Again, Crestview would be a private street with a gate at its access point.
Well, I'm sorry, not Crestview, Etherton. So you're saying that the main in and out of this neighborhood would be Etherton to Manchester Road?
If the project is approved, it puts the impetus not only on the city to complete the temporary Main Street, but also to to basically redouble our efforts on Etherton Road.
Okay. All right, we'll go with that.
Councilmember Mabry. Just a reminder to push my,
I need a buzzer. My hand. Just short. I spent lots of time on this and trying to find what was wrong with it. And I couldn't. I knew we were hundreds of thousands of dollars off from the best deal, but I really respect such concepts of present value weighed against future earnings. And this looked like it had all the future earnings to more than make up plus some. And it far surpassed to me the hundreds of thousands of dollars when divided by every single one of our 35,000 residents, I think. And what would seem almost an instantaneous return on that investment. And then you're just reaping the benefits of a completed Main Street from that point on, instead of trying to figure out how to wait another decade to do it. That's all. Thank you.
all right, I don't have any other speakers. So I'll ask if there's anyone that wishes to make any motion. Director Vunich mentioned a suggestion there, but I do have a question for Director Vunich. There were several other items that were brought up regarding the proposal. I mean, one was mentioned earlier, the number of units, but I think there were other conditions. And are those conditions still items that we need to review to determine, what the council's sentiment is?
The developers petitioners have framed the matter as if the Main Street component can't be addressed, the project can't move forward. So from that perspective, if there is direction on Main Street, then certainly I think that would be the first and logical step. Obviously, if there is a majority on city council that just feels the project isn't appropriate, that would be the next logical step.
Okay, so you see that while the discussion today has taken place primarily around the topic of the road, that there would be another discussion regarding those conditional items.
Yes, because again, we've worked through them with the developers, petitioners. I think there's just some questions. I wouldn't call complex questions. Obviously, Mr. Kranz believes 53 is the appropriate number. That's the number City Council gave to the department to place in the draft conditions. Certainly, if that's the number, that's fine. I think the developer would probably prefer 55. The plan that they presented is 55, which is a reduction. But at this stage, I think Main Street is really the wheels on the car that make it roll.
Okay, so Councilmember Edens.
So I just want to paraphrase, you suggested just recommending with proceeding with draft numbers to enter a negotiation because what we have now is not precise. That's correct. It hasn't been negotiated. And
no, it was a conversation held between Mr. Lee, developers, petitioners, and the Department of Planning. And certainly I think they would like something more black and white to proceed forward. And I think it's in the interest of the city and city council to have something that that they can basically look at and say, yes, I see what you're saying.
I agree with that sentiment. More information is always more information, and that's just tools in our pocket, and that can help me understand it better because I can't nitpick or be concerned about something that may or may not be accurate information. And so if I have accurate information, that helps me review it. So I will make the motion.
Just for clarity, city attorney, is there appropriate name for this type of document?
Yeah, as the director of planning said, it would be for the preparation of a development agreement.
Is that what you're making a motion for at this time, Councilmember Edens? Yes. No?
Sure. Yeah. The titles to me sounds like but that's semantics.
Right. And then is there a second then on that motion? Councilmember Dodwell, you're seconding it. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion regarding that motion? Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand. So the difference between this and what we did last month. So what are the terms of this going to be if we've not really negotiated the other stuff we talked about? A little confused on that.
Well, we have negotiated the conditions to the point where the condition was in draft form, the petitioners responded, and then the department responded to petitioners' response. And so you have those before you. I think for probably 95% of them, there's concurrence. I think the density is the only outstanding one. But again, if that's an issue you want to work through tonight, certainly we can.
No, I mean, the density thing, I think will probably be a discussion another day. I'm just trying to understand, like we had, I can't remember off the top of my head. There was a handful of things that I thought you just said you didn't really talk about because we're trying to figure the road thing out. So I'm not sure how we're going to come out of any terms if we don't know those things.
There's a payment of $125,000. We know there's a charge, a subtraction to the total cost of the frontage of $105,000. We need to work through the TGA to ensure that everybody is clear on where that money credited goes toward. And then I just think there's just the logistics components. And the development agreement may address some of the concerns that have been expressed tonight as well.
Okay.
All right, so Councilmember Dodwell.
I just wanted to ask, I know we have a second meeting in the month of October. Will we have this document before us at that second council meeting? Or will it have to wait until November?
Thank you, Mayor. In this case, with a developmental agreement, I would say the city attorney would be drafting that, and that'd be dependent on the workload that they have over there. So, do you think that's realistic, John, to get something like that together?
Given the amount of discussion that still needs to be had, I would venture to say we're looking at November.
Okay, anything else? We'll try a voice vote and see how that goes. Councilmember
Just
Trans.
Vacation, are we going along with their counter offer? Are we going to just negotiate further?
Certainly, I think there's been direction from city council that if we do proceed forward, we need more definition. And certainly we're going to position ourselves as trying to save as much money for the taxpayers as possible.
So we're not going to hold them accountable to pay for their portion of the Main Street. Is that the bottom line here?
Proceeding forward with the development agreement based upon the comments I've heard tonight, notwithstanding yours, Mr. Kranz, is that yes, absorb some of the costs that maybe
More than half. I mean, we're going to absorb half of the cost. Is what you're recommending?
Yes, and I think part of the development agreement needs to basically put that as precisely as possible.
You know, I don't like this development anyway. We've had a lot of residents oppose it. And so anyway, make your motion and go from there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, let's see if we have the motion on the floor. We'll see if we can accomplish it with the voice vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone that opposes? If you don't mind, just raise your hand if you oppose. We have Franz and Farmer. So given that, then the motion passes. All right, we are at 6:29 right now. Is that all for that item, Joe, or?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So we're at 6:29 at this time, and therefore we do have our regular meeting at 6:30. So what I would say is if there's no objection, we'll just take a couple of minutes break, and then we'll move into our regular meeting. So do we need a motion to recess, or we just come back to it? Okay, if someone would be kind to make a motion to adjourn until after the regular meeting, then we'll adjourn the work session. Councilmember Rambo.
I will make said motion.
Okay, is there a second? Councilmember Jackson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? All right, the work session will be adjourned for now, and we'll resume that after the regular meeting. It is 6:30, so what I'll do is ask for 5 minutes work for everyone, and then we'll start our regular city council meeting. Thank you, Lord. If we have everyone here yet. Anyone? Okay, welcome everyone to our Monday, October 14, 2024 City Council meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us that are here in the room and also that are watching online. So we'll start with the roll call.
Mayor Garitano,
Present.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Eden. Here. Councilmember Ottenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Preston,
Here.
Councilmember Mabry,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Crayons,
Here.
Councilmember Albers.
Great, thank you for that. Good to see everyone here. I would like to welcome Troop 456. Will help us with the Pledge of Allegiance for tonight, so welcome. Thanks again to Troop 456 for joining us. Please let's extend our appreciation for them being here. Okay, moving along with the agenda for tonight, the next item is the approval of minutes, and that will be part of the consent agenda. So we will now proceed forward with public participation. So we'll begin with public participation. Just a friendly reminder to everyone that's speaking, if you do wish to speak, fill out a speaker card and give it to our city clerk, who's seated to the left of the podium. And please come forward when your name is called. And when you do approach, please state your name and ward number. To ensure that all have the opportunity to speak, there is a 5-minute time limit, and I will let you know as you approach that time limit. If you have any questions for us, please mention that during your remarks. Identify the official you would like to respond. That official will make note of it, and at the conclusion of public participation, any official who chooses to respond will have 3 minutes to do so. The official may choose to respond to your questions after tonight's meeting. Again, please be respectful to others in making your remarks. Interrupting, using profane or abusive language are prohibited. And thank you again to everyone in advance for following these guidelines. City Clerk, our first speaker.
The first speaker card is Tim Comer.
Tim Comer, 2460 Atherton Road, Ward 8. My property is directly next to this development. I've opposed the development from day one. I've personally sent every one of you pictures of the current erosion issues, and I'm going to tell you now that they will only get worse regardless of what they say, because you can just take the subdivision in Brightleaf that was approved by MSD, and it was all built, and the guy came to coffee with the mayor and he voiced his problems, and he has lots of problems, and I'm going to have all the same issues, if not even worse. But I don't have to, I don't want to waste my time on the erosion, because you're all well aware. I've sent you pictures, I've sent you emails. I do want to say, though, that I reached out to quite a few of you through the phone, and I got one return phone call. That's shocking. It's your job to call me back. If you ran for council and you want this position, and if I call you and I gave you lots of time, nobody called me back, except for one council person. I don't want to throw out names, but I just think that's wrong. You should need to call your people back. That's why you're here. That's why we voted you in. But I want to talk about this road. So when Mr. Vunich was up here and he talked about talking to residents and they didn't want to give up their land. Well, lots have changed since I believe that he talked to them. I think that was a long time ago. And a lot of these residents that were on Crestview had already moved out, and their houses became rental properties. And they were holding out because McBride offered them a big dollar bill for their property. I guarantee if you go talk to these residents on the other side, they're going to be all for it. And I firmly believe, and it's something probably for the city attorney, but since we need access to the park and it's a public park, we have every right to take the land by eminent domain. We don't need Tony. Take his by eminent domain, and the number is a big deal. A lot of you said, oh, it's not a big deal for one or two, but it is a big deal. A big deal. Mr. Vunich said, if you want 54, it has to be a leasing building. Okay, well, he ain't gonna do that. His current residents that he rents to on Atherton Road don't even have leases. They don't have leases. He's been leasing to some of them for 15 years. They had one lease. That's it. The other one moved out just recently because he was afraid that he could just come up to him and say, you need to leave in 30 days. So this is the kind of people you're dealing with. And I don't think the city wants all that headache. And he needs to pay his fair share of the road. I firmly believe the road's a bad idea, because Atherton Road is full of nothing but speeding cars. It's a narrow road. It will never have the room to expand on either side. There's just no room. I remember years ago when they put in the sewer system, I was the last person. I held out. And I to this day, I wish I wouldn't have never granted them access, because they wouldn't have got it with 4 90-degree turns, I can tell you. And if you're going to move all the utilities on Atherton to improve it, you're talking millions of dollars. And it's just not feasible. But for the city to sit up here with the council people and say, oh, we got to have this road. We got to have this road. Well, then take it by eminent domain. I mean, don't take it just because we don't approve this garbage just because we want the road. I mean, you got to think about it. These are all rental homes still. And, they say, is he going to approve the Atherton Road? The only thing he's going to do to Atherton Road is put in parking spots like Main Street has. And that's worse, because now you got people getting in and out of your cars. They're super close to the stop sign, and nobody stops at the stop sign anyway. And it's just never ending. And I don't know where he got the figure that land's worth $105,000, because if you just Google it, it'll come up with Wildwood. I don't have my phone, but I could give you the site, and let's say it's worth $227,000. That would make the parcel of land that he wants, which is 20 feet by 445 feet, that would make it worth about $27,000. Okay, and I think it's a ripoff to put this on the taxpayer's back. just for the road. Have them parked in the parking garage.
We are at time
That's
wrapped up. Thank you. Okay, next speaker.
The next speaker is Lynn Link.
Hello, Lynn Link, Ward 6, 4028 Indian Ridge. The TB latitude development is wrong for us. It's the minimum standard of any municipality to protect the citizens and put their safety over the wishes of developers. In planning and zoning, this requires that those elected into office take the time to educate themselves on every issue. Last week, I attended the planning and zoning meeting. The commissioners were discussing whether the 15-foot garage setback was required on a future development. One commissioner asked if there was a reason for the 15 feet, and to my surprise, no one gave an answer. The 15-foot setback is used because the average car size in the US is 14.7 feet. The average size of a pickup truck is 18 to 20 feet. In high-density areas, this allows for more cars to park off the street so that the roads can be accessed by EMS trucks and fire trucks during times of emergency. According to the U.S. Fire Administration.gov, every year in the U.S., there are about 6,600 garage fires in homes, resulting in an average of 457 million in property damage, 400 injuries, and 30 fatalities. 93% of garage fires occur in 1- and 2-family homes with attached garages. Because of what is stored in the garage, fires spread more quickly and can cause more damage than any other type of house fire. When garages are lower than any other part of the home, which they will be in some of these houses, they'll be underneath, I believe, then typically they spread quicker. A 15-foot garage setback can decrease the amount of square footage on a home so that a builder in order to build requires more land if they do. So that's why they're generally against it. With high density housing, the risk of house fires spreading from house to house obviously increases, along with the risk of losing an entire development or community from wildfire. In the case of a garage fire, by ignoring the 15-foot setback and allowing higher density so that developers can increase their profit, municipal governments are creating an increased risk to the citizens who will live around those developments. In Wildwood, the TB Benton latitude development will be very high density, which is likely to increase the water runoff and erosion on adjacent and downstream properties. We can see the problems with parking already in many of the online complaints that have been posted about the existing Benton home rentals in St. Charles County. Will the city allow this problem and the other problems to spill over to our village green? I've previously brought up dormant soil toxins being surfaced in development and the issue of asbestos abatement on the demolition of existing houses. Have any of you seen soil toxin studies? Have any of you seen the required Missouri DNR asbestos abatement reports? Mr. Bosworth has been trying to develop this land since 2017. The current proposal is even more dense than his original. Notwithstanding the fact that all of his plans, including the current one, have been denied by prior commissions and councils, we are here now. He's not even maintaining the existing structures, and this council is still considering approving this. The rights of existing property owners not to have their homes adversely impacted by developments supersede the rights of developers to build. The Missouri Supreme Court in Bank in the B.G. Olive Grazier case confirmed your exclusive authority to deny the developers for any reason. And in the case of this development, you have many.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
The next speaker is Richard Erker.
Good evening. Rich Erker, Ward 1, 1504 Homestead Valley Drive. I'm here in reference to the Wildwood Gazette, Fall, page 9, reference to phase 2 of the Village Green. In reference in there is the agreement with or partnership with Unlimited Play, who builds all-inclusive playgrounds. I was part of the first playground and community park that's all-inclusive. And I want to thank you for, again, remembering Unlimited Play, Joe, and all the council members, and Mr. Mayor for having another all-inclusive playground in Wildwood. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Next speaker.
Mark Latham.
I'm Mark Latham, Ward 8, 2421 Lark Song Drive, and I'm speaking about the Latitude 38. I had got here in time to see the last part of the work session, and thank you too for hearing. I'm sorry, I'm just flabbergasted because we feel that you've heard from the majority of the people and the majority of this council is not paying attention. Joe, when he was a council member, made a comment about people are leaving Wildwood to go do things. This city doesn't even have tennis courts or pickleball courts. That's just starting with one thing. We have to go elsewhere to do that. We don't have anything in this town other than a theater, but you're not bringing in people by the thousands to go to the theater anymore. Chesterfield just is putting another athletic complex. I'm not saying we need one of those, but we need something, an attraction to bring people into the city. This is a great place, and yeah, you're going to take some of my tax money to pay for this road. You need to listen to what some of our ideas are out here, because I've never been involved in city government before, and I don't really want to have to come back and speak because I don't feel like anybody up here is listening. It's very frustrating. And I don't know if in order to take my tax dollars and put it to this road that I have talked to you about many times about, the high rent district isn't going to bring people into the city. We need something like a sculpture park or some kind of idea. You look at Chesterfield, you've got Topgolf. I'm not saying bring a Topgolf in, but you've got the venues west of Topgolf that are entertainment venues and stuff that brings people into the area. So we need to look outside the box here because we're not hitting the mark. Like I said, the high rent district isn't going to bring people into the city to participate in this. This is, I'm at a loss for words, especially seeing the last part of that work session. But we need to do something different because also, if you drive down Etherton, I don't know how many of you have been on Etherton at the old Manchester Road. Look at the porch. The porch has about 8 to 10 feet on the side of it. They're going to expand that on the east side. You've got 3 or 4 houses behind that I don't know how you're going to take any more of these folks' yard without taking the houses with them. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of problems still to be looked at and evaluated. And I don't know how far what came out of this work session tonight is going to move ahead, but it's frustrating as a citizen and a taxpayer in this city right now.
All right, thank you. Next speaker.
Julie Parsons.
Good evening. My name is Julie Parsons. I'm in Ward 8. I live at 2425 Etherton Road. And I've been listening in on these sessions for a long time now, for several months. And it seems like at the end of the work session, the city is going to end up paying for the road. So Mr. Bosworth has offered his property, his access for $105,000. Why don't we just give him the $105,000 and not approve this project? We don't want it. We don't want this rental housing project in our neighborhood. So if the city's going to pay for the road, let's just pay for the road and not approve the project. I'm a little worried about, I heard Councilwoman Edens mention litigation. I hope the threat of litigation is not a reason to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Tony Bosworth.
Good evening. Tony Bosworth with TB Realty and Benton Home Builders, Ward 8, 2442 Etherton Road. First, let me speak to, there's no threat of litigation. We are meeting 100% of the regulating plan. As you may remember, when I brought this to you January 6th, my first comment was we meet 100% of the regulating plan. We originally started out with 67 units, 2 of which were commercial, but 65 residential units, which was about 10.2 units, which was still below the 11-to-1 allowed by your regulating plan. We are now down to about 7.87 to 1. So we've reduced our ratio dramatically. Again, we meet 100% of the regulating plan. Developers, people portray like developers come looking for these gross modifications. It was your regulating plan, your master plan that set forth how we design this project, whether it's density, whether it's all these other items. The PRD overlay gives you the ability to ask us to contribute to Main Street. We've agreed to that. What we are asking or trying to work with the city in a public-private partnership, which you've also heard me use before numerous times, we are affording the city the ability to build a 40-foot road south of Crestview. So, Ms. McCutcheon, just to make it a little bit clear, Crestview will remain. We will build an existing roadway similar to what you have out here, except there will be no center island, south of Crestview Drive between the front porches of our Main Street facing houses and the existing Crestview Drive all the way down. It's 1,350 feet total from Etherton to Market Street. We can do less than 55 units. We can meet the regulating plan without doing the PRD. In doing that, we would not contribute to Main Street. We can build as in response to, I think, Mr. Farmer's question, can we build the project without doing Main Street? Yes, we can. We can build the first 30 feet of Main Street for our use only and abandon Crestview, abandon the future potential for Main Street. It will allow the city no access to a park. Crestview is a private street for the use of its residents only, not a commercial use, not the park and its invitees, because it is not a public facility. The park is a public facility. So the street is also owned joint and several, not to the center line of the road. So it requires 100% to develop Crestview in its existing format, requires the consent of 100% of the residents and the owners of Crestview Drive under the existing easement. We can build 44 units, as Mr. Krantz suggested at the last meeting. We can build 44 units, not do anything with Crestview Drive, and we are happy to do that. We have a plan in working with Mr. Lee and Mr. Vunich over the last 3 months, as well as other staff members, to do the existing project that allows everybody to benefit. Joe and I met about this on the 4th of July weekend, 2018, along with the previous city administrator, Ryan Thomas, and sat there literally on the street when I offered way back then to have the ability to build Main Street adjacent to the existing Crestview. I've always stood by that. That was 6 years ago. I'm happy to do it. It's also important to point out, I don't know if you guys pay attention to the budget, but the city of Wildwood in the last 3 years has diverted $1.1 million of the existing TGA fees, 850 out of the East Project TGA fees, which is east of Highway 109, and $87,000 a year for 3 years, for a total of $1.1 million to Center Avenue, which is no benefit to the city, to the BA roundabout, and to the roundabout at Wild Horse Creek and 109. The things you are doing are beautification, not beneficial to the traffic of the project. There's no reason why those funds should have been used for Main Street. You guys as a council selectively chose to allow that to happen. Those funds should have stayed in the project where they were intended, which was the future Main Street. One other quick comment, Mr. Comer comments constantly about the drainage. We provided a plan, which is in the packet you had tonight, He has 1.1 acres of our site draining
30
onto his
seconds.
site. At the end, he will have 0.1 acres. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker.
Brad Goss.
Brad Goss, 7711 Carondelet, Suite 800, Clayton, Missouri, 63105. I represent the developer of the Latitude 38 North 38 project. I'll be very brief. The basic point that we're trying to make is that the plan that was presented to the city complies with the regulating plan. It always has from the beginning, and we followed through on that. We looked at the regulating plan very carefully. And that's why we presented the plan we presented to you. That requires a PRD in order to do that. However, there is another alternative. And the other alternative is simply to go straight zoning. If we go straight zoning, then any of these improvements we've been talking about for Main Street would not happen. Simply wouldn't happen because they're not necessary for the development of the property. Property will have access out to Etherton Road and can develop with, fewer units, but the numbers pencil out. And the alternative is, we believe that alternative isn't a good alternative for not simply the developer, but for the city either. Main Street has been a long-term goal of the city, and this plan allows that goal to be realized, not to the grandest scope. We can't do what we want on the north side, but you will get a 2-lane road, Main Street. It will be built. The south side will be approved by my client at their cost in accordance with your requirements. And then Crestview will remain. It'll just continue as a private road. And at some point, if it becomes available, it becomes available. But it gets you a long ways down the road. It allows you to have that connection for Village Green. We think that's good for the city. We think it's good for our project. And as Mr. Bosworth has said, we want to partner with the city to make that happen. So appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
William Levinson.
Good evening. My name is William Levinson, president of Benton Home Builders and a member of the Latitude N38 development team. My address is 11605 Stud Avenue, Suite 102, Shreveport, Missouri, 63141. Just would like to reiterate a couple of the points. Currently, our property is zoned non-urban, which means it just doesn't have a zoning designation yet. The master plan calls for R6, I believe it is, under straight zoning. I believe Mr. Kranz brought up at a previous meeting that that's what he would like to see. I mean, that is a possibility, but it's just simply not as good a result for anybody. I mean, under that scenario, like Mr. Goss said, we would get somewhere between 44 or 46 units. We haven't fully engineered it yet. We would improve Etherton along the frontage of our property, and we would come in and out of Etherton. We would contribute TGA fees, it's part of your code. We would also give 20 feet of right-of-way. Problem is, 20 feet of right-of-way is not enough to make the road connect. We are aware that this is a long-time goal of the city. We are trying to find a win-win here, but it's been a very long and arduous process. In working with the city, we discussed the city's goals and how we could work together to make them happen. The result of that discussion is the plan in front of you. It is a PRD where the city is able to put conditions on us, such as ask us to make additional contributions, 20 feet more of ground, TGA fees, constructing portions of the road. These are all things that we have agreed to do. However, there is another alternative, and it would be a poor result for everybody. The only other thing I'd like to point out is that we worked with the city down to the detail of how many streetlights we would be putting in along Main Street. We have talked about curbs, size of sidewalks, walking trails, all of these things that would not be required under straight zoning. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows we're trying really hard to work with the city here, and we'd like to continue to do that. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker.
Jean Vedvig.
Next speaker.
Michelle Eisenhart.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Eisenhart, 601 Dartmouth Crest Drive, Ward 5.
And I'm mostly here to thank you for hearing me out last month. Many of you were so responsive to my request for our flashing crosswalk sign right at the entrance to Dartmouth and Clayton Road. So for those of you that don't know, I brought it up last month as a public safety issue. I do believe it to be more than just an issue for our neighborhood. I believe it to be an issue for our community. And I do want to thank you for bringing that to the attention of the Board of Public Safety. I believe, unfortunately, I did not get a chance to go to that, but I will continue to spread the word to everybody in my neighborhood and anybody who will listen to me to come to the next Board of Safety meeting. So from what I gather from just reading that, it looks like there is an opportunity for Wildwood to continue to, or Wildwood City Council here to work with the county and Rockwood. And there's potentially an option for approval of adding funding to the city's capital improvement program budget is what it said. So I'm just here to request that as these things transpire, that you all approve that budget for our much needed safety at that intersection. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. The next speaker.
Teresa Clark.
Teresa Clark, 18533 Sassafras Point Drive, Wildwood, and I'm in Ward 1, Durful. Good to see you guys again from a different perspective, but I want to start out by thanking the whole group, the staff, the city council, the mayor, John Young, the attorney, everyone for all the things that you do, and it really is noticed in the city, and I know firsthand how much time goes into this and how much that you do to try to come up with the best solution to every problem. But I want to especially make a public thank you and appreciation to our Wildwood precinct tonight. I wanted to make that public because recently I have had an issue that came up unexpectedly, and the precinct came in, and I don't know that I would be here now if they hadn't helped out with this. Captain Mundell was absolutely wonderful, and Sergeant Jacqueline, together they resolved some issues, and I just appreciated them so much. I just wanted to put that out there. Our CIT officer that isn't in the Wildwood precinct, but Chris Castor, he also was instrumental in making more things happen than you could imagine. So I just wanted to make that public thank you to them and let you know that they are appreciated as well as you are appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Aaron Ridgway.
Hi there, I'm Erin Ridgway, 2224 Dartmouth Place Drive. I'm really just here to follow up, I'm in Ward 5, follow up with Michelle on the crosswalk at Clayton and Dartmouth Crest Drive. Just to add a personal note, we were at the Lafayette Eureka game on Friday night when it was dark. The game wasn't over, there was lots of kids around. We tried to stand there to cross the road, and we saw 13 cars pass us going 25 to 40 miles an hour. There were cops there, there was nobody stopping. It's just so dark without lights there. It's scary for our children to have to cross and try and run across with the car. So just to reiterate, we want to thank you for considering it and to hopefully get some lights and keep our kids safe. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker.
Dan Tripp.
Is your item related to the public hearing? I believe, yeah, you're going to speak, I'm assuming to Good News, right? All right, hold on. Yeah, I'm assuming if it's related to the bill, then hold off until we get to the public hearing. That'd be the appropriate time. Okay. All right, so then thank you all for the public participation section here and everyone that was able to speak here this evening. So if there is anyone that is online watching, please do use the raise hand feature if you do wish to speak during public comment. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move into mayor's announcements. We had planned to provide a proclamation to equine assisted therapy, but we just learned previously to the meeting starting tonight that the representative was unable to make it tonight due to something unexpected. So we're going to reschedule that for an upcoming meeting to present that proclamation, recognizing their anniversary, the city. So we'll proceed with that then. The next then we'll move into is a public hearing. So we have the first public hearing related to the PZ 118-92 St. Louis Nursery Partnership, West County Feed and Supply Store, and now Good News Brewing Company. So Director Vunich, you wish to come forward?
Mr. Mayor, unless Mr. Young corrects me, would you like to have the advertisement read into the record?
A correction to a recently amended site-specific ordinance regarding PZ 118-92 St. Louis Nursery Partnership, West County Feed and Supply Store, now Good News Brewing Company, amended C8 Planned Commercial District, street address 2603 West Avenue, St. Louis County, locator number 24V420175, which recommends an adjustment to certain building, structure, and parking area setback distances that were not addressed, given a precise engineered plan was not available at the time of the Planning and Zoning Commission's first review and action on this new use of this property.
Thank you for reading that into the record. So at this time, we'll go ahead and declare the public hearing open. Director Vunich, do you have any opening remarks?
Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, just a few. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this particular request at its meeting last Monday. And at the conclusion of that, in September, at the conclusion of that particular discussion, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously approved alterations to parking and structure building setbacks along the eastern boundary line of the subject site. That particular boundary line is West Avenue. And the Planning and Zoning Commission, in making that recommendation to City Council, noted that the impact on the adjoining properties is minimal, and it is consistent with the layout of improvements that are currently on the site. Therefore, tonight, the Planning and Zoning Commission is presenting for consideration the change in the setbacks relative to parking, building, and structures along West Avenue. And in the report from the Planning and Zoning Commission, those are identified by the bolded red font. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vunich. So at this time, we do have several speaker cards for the public hearing. The same rules apply as I mentioned earlier regarding public hearing. So the city clerk, who is first?
Dan Tripp.
Just a reminder, just state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Dan Tripp, 2890 South Highway 94, Defiance, Missouri. I'm one of the owners of Good News Brewing Company. Thank you for this opportunity. It has been a pleasure to work with Wildwood. You've been just very supportive of this project, and we thank you for this opportunity. I don't know if there's people coming to speak against this tonight, but if there is, it seems like the biggest concern that people have is the music and the loud noise that this might have. I don't think you've ever been to one of our locations, but typically the only time we have music is on Sunday afternoon. That's it. We're not a big, motorcycle, biker, gang, rock star music place. We serve craft beer. I don't know if you know, but that's typically not the crowd that comes to our place. People are looking for rock music. Usually our music is just one or two people playing an acoustic guitar, having a good time. We're trying to be a family fun entertainment place. As mentioned earlier, we need more places for people to gather. We're going to be dog friendly, family friendly, bike friendly, and we're excited to be a part of this. And so I just want to kind of set that for people who might have concerns about music. I am here tonight to request, though, a second reading to help us move this process along.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker?
Lynn Link.
Lynn Link, still at the same address. I love and really will miss the feed store. It was one of the most amazing things when we moved here to look at that feed store, and it's what really made Wildwood unique. And we're losing so much of that uniqueness, I think. And if approved, I will love and use the Good News Brewing place too. That sounds awesome. But you don't need to listen to me. You need to listen to the people who are going to live next to it and who will be affected most. Hopefully, like the owner says, it won't affect them. And I want to say that there are so many people who have come up to me at all sorts of different venues. And most of the people on the council have a problem. They have a perception problem. People, with a few exceptions, you have a perception problem. People really don't trust you. They think every single, and I honestly, I defend you because I lived in Ward 6, unincorporated St. Louis County. I know what corruption was because our council member ended up going to jail. And I don't think any of you are corrupt, but you really do need to do a better job of listening to your constituents, answering calls, even if it's just to say, I got your email. I know you're concerned. Thank you. If it just something really short. And I know my father was an alderman for years, and I know that you all have real lives and you're all good people, like Mr. Farmer said. I realize that, but you guys really do need to do a better job with your constituents, making them feel that you represent them. And when you have to vote for something that the people overwhelmingly don't want, like the TB project, you need to do a better job at explaining to them. But thank you for listening to me. And I'm honestly, I try to defend you all. You're welcome.
Thank you. Next speaker. Okay, we do not have any more speakers. So Director Vunich back up at the podium.
Just a couple points, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, we are very cognizant, that being the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Departments of Planning and Public Works, about noise. And certainly one of the areas that was a focus of the discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission is how to treat the stage. The stage is orientated toward the southwest corner of the property. That corner is also where commercial uses are located. So again, not inhabited residences. We also required sound dampening curtains on 3 sides of the structure or some type of sound wall. And Mr. Tripp has agreed to provide the amplification system so that there's consistency and control over it. So it isn't that the musicians will bring in something that's unexpected. And in the proposed legislation that's before you tonight, there are hours of operation in association with the business, and those include when music can or cannot be played. The department believes that the Planning and Zoning Commission took into account the comments that were provided as part of the process that led us here tonight. And again, the department has prepared the bill for first reading. Do have a request from the owner of the business to proceed forward with the second reading tonight as well. If there are any questions, the department would be glad to answer them at this time.
Okay, do we have any questions related to this item here? Councilmember Mabry.
Director Vunich. I heard some phrase about change in setbacks. Did I hear the phrase wrong, or is there some proposal to make the change in setbacks different than the first reading?
As best as I can, I'll do this as quickly as possible. When Mr. Tripp contacted the city of Wildwood, so the latter part of March, and brought forward a proposal to basically convert West County Feed and Supply into Good News Brewing Company, which will initially just be a sit-down restaurant with some accessory activities. The intent was to move the project along as quickly as possible. In fact, we were hoping that we might be in a position to have it open this fall. There were a couple of items that required more time. One was the existing facility, West County Feed and Supply, is on a septic system. Obviously, a restaurant needs to be connected to the public sewer system. So MSD had to be involved, and that also brought along potential stormwater improvements. Given that Mr. Tripp and his company are planning to reuse the existing structure and not expand parking, MSD was able to accommodate just wastewater treatment versus stormwater treatment. This all boils down to we were moving the project along as fast as possible. A lot of the decisions were based upon an initial set of plans. When the engineered plans were submitted, it was discovered that the department didn't catch the setback requirements along the east boundary line, West Avenue. And so tonight it's really a correction to address what the engineered plans now show and actually what exists out on site.
That's what I thought I caught looking through it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Do we have anyone else from the council that has a question or anything for Director Vudic?
Thank you.
Okay, then seeing none, then without any objection, I'll declare this public hearing closed. So proceed forward with that legislation. So we have several items under unfinished business here. So Bill 2919 is before the council for a second reading and concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by City Administrator, do you have something to say or?
Yes, before we get the second reading, actually, sec. Okay. I digress.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and proceed with the second reading. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second? Made by Councilmember Marshall. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2919.
2919, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, revising the budget for the city of Wildwood, Missouri for the fiscal year commencing on January 1, 2024 and ending on December 31, 2024, second reading.
Mr. Lee, do you now wish to add anything to the information?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just wanted to add one quick note. You'll notice if you looked at the attachment today on the exhibit, there was also an amended exhibit. There were a couple items we wanted to clean up, just with some of the more data that came in a couple months after the 630. So we wanted to have that be reflected. And in this case, the department would be requesting a motion to adopt the amended Exhibit A in place of the Exhibit A that was provided with it.
All right, any discussion regarding this bill? All right, seeing none, then Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final. City Administrator, City Attorney, I'm sorry, is that appropriate now to do a motion to amend, to add the amendment, or do we do that after the second reading?
After the second reading.
Okay, so we'll go ahead, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for the final passage. What? Hold on.
The second reading has occurred. So now that the second reading has occurred, a motion to provide for the amendment is appropriate at this time.
Okay, so this time we'll seek a motion to amend. Councilmember Farmer? Okay, making the motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Jaxi. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, again, I'll ask if there's any discussion regarding the amendment. And seeing none, then Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Bruce,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani. Councilmember Preston.
Yes.
Councilmember Mabry. Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember Crayons.
Yes.
Bill passes. We have several bills here that I would propose, unless there's any objection, if we can read these en masse for the sake of efficiency here. Bills 2922, 2923, 2924, and 2926. Is there any objection to reading them en masse for second reading? All right, so Bill 2922 it concerns Ward 8, 2923 concerns Ward 6. Same goes for 2924, Ward 6, and Bill 2926 concerns all wards. Therefore, is there a motion for the second reading of these bills? Made by Councilmember Ottenberg. Is there a second? Councilmember Rambo. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ms. Eldridge, please read the bills.
Bill number 2922, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute an amended professional service agreement with Unlimited Play for a total not to exceed amount of $33,500 for consulting efforts for an all-inclusive playground facility, second reading. Bill number 2923, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, placing the Hayman Scott House circa 1859 onto the city of Wildwood's historic register, recognizing the dwelling as a building of significant historic importance consistent with the Historic Preservation Commission's letter of recommendation adopted on July 25th, 2024. Second reading. Bill number 2924, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, approving a boundary adjustment plat for two lots of record, becoming 16.1 acres and 6.2 acres respectively, which are adjusted lot 15 of Guilford Boundary Adjustment Plat, Plat Book 345, page 638, and a tract of land in the north half of the northwest quarter of Section 33, Township 44 North, Range 3 East, located between Lime Rock Lane and Thunderbolt Lane, and to be hereafter known as Christie Subdivision, second reading. Bill number 2926, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending Title 4 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, by deleting section 425.130 in its entirety and enacting in lieu thereof a new chapter 426, providing for right-of-way management regulations, second reading.
Thank you. Director Vunich, do you wish to come up and add anything to these bills pertaining to the ones that you have there, 2922, 2923, and 2924?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the bills themselves have not changed since their introduction. And if there are any questions or comments, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time.
Do we have any questions or comments pertaining to the bills for Director Vunich? Right, seeing none, thank you, Director Vunich. Director Brown, do you wish to add any additional information to Bill 2926?
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing additional to add, but as Joe said, I'm available for any questions relative to Bill 2926.
Okay, do we have anyone with questions for Director Brown? All right, seeing none, then I don't see any other hands up for discussion here pertaining to these bills. So Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage.
Councilmember Edens.
Aye.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani. Councilmember Preston.
Yes.
Councilmember Mabry.
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember Crayons. Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Passes. Thank you. We're moving on now to new business. So we have several bills here. There is a request from the Department of Administration for the indefinite postponement of Bill 2930. So I'll ask for that shortly, just a motion to do that. We do have several bills that have also been requested for a second reading. We'll come back to those after we do the first reading. So without any objection, if there is any objection, we'll certainly pull up any bill separately, but otherwise, again, for the sake of efficiency, we'll see if we can read these in mass. Bills 2828 concerning all wards, 2829 concerning wards 2, 3, and 4, 2931 concerning Ward 8, and 2932 concerning Ward 8, 2933 and 2934 concern all wards. 2935 and 2936 concern wards 7 and 8, and Bill 2937 concerns all wards. Any objection if we go ahead and read these en masse? Councilmember Mabry? Yeah, for first reading, if after we do the reading, we'll certainly ask the directors to come up and provide any additional information. If you have a question for clarity, that would be an appropriate time. Yep, absolutely. Okay, seeing no request to remove any items, reading them en masse, is there a motion for the first reading of the bills? Made by Councilmember Mabry. Is there a second? Councilmember Preston. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read the bills.
Bill number 2928, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, amending Chapter 205 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, providing regulations for animals at large, first reading. Bill number 2929, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an agreement with White Buffalo Incorporated for a reduction of the deer population within the City of Wildwood, first reading. Bill number 2931, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, amending ordinance number 2921 pertaining to the agreement with James G. Stat Tuck Pointing and Waterproofing Incorporated, first reading. Bill number 2932, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an agreement with Leak Stoppers Roofing LLC for the installation of guttering at the Wildwood Municipal Building, first reading. Bill number 2933, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, amending Chapter 500 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, and enacting in lieu thereof a new Article 11 to Chapter 500, providing for a reoccupancy program for all rental residential units, first reading. Bill number 2934, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing an amendment to an existing agreement with St. Louis County, Missouri, for code enforcement services for building/swimming pool and spa, residential, existing building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, explosives, and property maintenance codes, first reading. Bill number 2935, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement with Infrastructure Management Incorporated for construction of the Manchester Road and Taylor Road resurfacing and signal improvement project, including traffic control and other incidental items as shown on the construction drawings and specifications, first reading. Bill number 2936, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a supplemental agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for an increase in federal funding for construction of the Manchester Road and Taylor Road resurfacing and signal improvement project, first reading. Bill number 2937, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the purchase of one 2024 Chevrolet Colorado 4WD crew cab pickup truck from Don Brown Chevrolet Incorporated through the State of Missouri Cooperative Procurement Program, first reading.
Okay, at this time, I'll ask Director Vunich, please come up to the podium, and if there's any information that you wish to add. If not, we'll entertain any questions.
Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, Bill 2933 is the culmination of months of work by our Planning and Parks Committee, along with the city attorney and others, to bring forward a residential reoccupancy program for non-owner occupied 1 and 2 family dwellings and all multiple family units. To reach this point, there were several public input sessions that were held by the committee to gauge any concerns or interest in this particular program. And as you know, recent times, there are a greater number of rental units in many of our established single family subdivisions, and concerns have been raised, and this is in response to those concerns.
Thank you. Any other information related to any of the bills that you have?
The only other is the accompanying Bill 2934, which would allow St. Louis County to amend the contract with the city to allow for it to do those reoccupancy inspections as they do for all inspections relative to building codes and other trades. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Director Vunich? Just a moment. Yeah, we have Councilmember Marsh.
Mr. Vunich, under the county agreement, I know that part of them inspecting this is they will do septic systems and they'll do wells. for those that are not included in it. I didn't see that in any of the write-up on the county agreement. Is it just assume that they'll do it?
The plumbing code, the component of the plumbing code already covers the septic systems, drain fields, the tanks themselves. In regards to the other, I'll have to investigate. I'm not asking for a second reading tonight, so I'll have that answer for you.
That's great. Thanks.
Any other questions for Director Vunich? Councilmember Dodwell. After we get through these bills, I will ask for a motion regarding that, and the city administrator can provide more information regarding the postponement request. Okay, anything else for Director Vunich? Councilmember Mabry, do you have a question for Director Vunich?
Bill 2928, animals at large. Under probably section 3, I think, when I go back to it, it appeared to be no provision for under definitions of what a animal or pet at large is. It appeared somewhere down near item 3, and I wrote it down. No provision for unleashed pet on property not confined on property without permanent physical barrier. That is a fence. Oh, Mr. Brown, good evening.
Okay, we'll segue into Director Brown. So did you hear that? And you want to address that as well as any other items too that you may wish to add information?
Certainly, Mayor Gurton, I'm available for questions on all the bills. Councilmember Mabry, you had a question about Bill 2928, I believe. I don't know that I heard the full entirety of the concern, and I may have to ask John Young to assist with this as well, because John wrote the bill.
Okay, and then it looks like the city administrator has something to add as well related to that. Maybe that'll help.
Councilmember Mabry, if you could clarify just a little bit, but really the main piece that is this bill is addressing is just making sure that if you're walking a pet outside of a fenced in area or outside of your home, that it should be leashed. So in that case, could you clarify a little bit on the question?
Yes, it would be section 1, item B, at large, comma, definition. I read through all of what constitutes a pet at large, therefore exorbitantly more dangerous than one that's contained or confined or not at large. And only because we've had a chronic repeat incident with more than one resident's pet in a subdivision of 18 that I'm trustee of. I read this with a fine-tooth comb, which made me wonder about what looked like the fact that there's no provision for a dog running around on its owner's property without a fence. And we have, as I said, a couple of residents who think it their mission in life to make certain that their dog is able to run around free on their 3 to 5 to 6 acre lots without having to put up any type of fence, either around a dog fence or a pool fence or any fence. And these dogs have taken on multiple occasions to attack the residents who are stopping, coming home from work in their car at a gang of 18 mailboxes. And the dogs will be present knowing there's cars coming. And it's been a chronic issue over a few years. So what I wondered reading through item B at large, items 1A, 2A, 1, 2, 3, I go, where is it that a dog is not allowed to run around on open property without a fence around it? And that's one that obviously doesn't have a leash that's being held by a responsible party.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, based off the definition, it's pretty much saying that if the dog or cat or puppy or kitten is in an area in which it could escape, so even a larger acre lot, large lot property, it should be connected to a leash unless you have something in which that the animal cannot escape. So an invisible fence could potentially be installed on their behalf, or
properly operating. You always got to put caveats in it.
Yeah.
But what I guess I'm really, the crux of it is a dog is not illegally at large until it runs out of its own property, but it doesn't know what property its owner owns. And the property owner, by definition, leaving a pet unattended and not on a leash, is already in violation, but the pet isn't. So we have to wait until the dog runs off its property with not being leashed before we can stand around with 15 cops waiting to take the animal into custody. This got to be such a point that I didn't even know about this until reading them about it as an open item. So I just wondered whether we need an item 4 that takes care of that loophole, which is a pretty glaring one.
I actually will turn to the city attorney on this to get a little bit more clarification. I think, what he's saying is that he has, council, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Mabry, but the issue that you find here is that if you're on your real property, so say you have a 3-acre lot, your dog's in the backyard running around, technically you're not in violation and not at large per se. You're saying the dog doesn't know where the property line is, so you want a provision in there to address those individuals that may have their dogs in the backyard and address it before they exit the property line.
Yes, and there are residents that I think it's against their liberty to put a dog on a leash or to have to stand there and take the time out of their lives to watch it while it's outside at duty calls, or just wandering around, and they just refuse to believe reality that they've had people imprisoned in their car deciding they want to go and get their mail out of the box or wait for the dog to get bored or go home and try to come back later at the mercy of whoever let the dog out and before it goes back in the house. And it's a big loophole that I'm wondering why isn't it even addressed here?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, to just address some of I'm going to give you a couple of practical answers to that and then kind of the irrelevant legal answer. But the first practical answer is, and I'm going to ask to be corrected if I'm wrong, but St. Louis County provides our enforcement for our animal control, and all the revisions in this ordinance were at the request of St. Louis County to be consistent with the county ordinances. So they want our ordinance to mirror their ordinances for purposes of their enforcement of the city's animal control. The second issue is the practicality of saying that we're going to require that in essence, it would be at all times, an animal must be leashed irrespective of their location. I think that becomes, because that's ultimately what would have to be required at that time. Because if you're on the property you own and you're saying they have to be restrained, it's either leashed or fenced. I think that becomes a very practical burden that I'm not sure that we can legally require.
All right, I appreciate that it's a willful omission of something that's impractical to enforce, because I'm more aware of the St. Louis County ordinance than with the Wildwood. I did not know that we would have a different one than St. Louis County. So as trustee, I'll be attempting to explain that it's just impractical to include all the definitions of an animal at large. They can't all be included because they're not all practical. That's easy for me to explain.
Yeah, and I will say that the moment they do leave that property, so the scenario you've referred to of that animal leaving the property to go after people who are getting out of their cars, at the moment that animal leaves the property, they are in violation of this code as it's drafted.
And I've told them, and I have called police when the animals have been reported to me as trustee as having kept someone. It's always at the top of the road at the mailboxes of 18 mailboxes, and a couple of dogs that do this. One is the resident of exactly behind these mailboxes, and the other is the next one over. And they have they've really been attack mode, forced one to jump in their car and close the door. And I've told them, well, I'm going to do what I can legally to keep that from happening, even if these couple of neighbors are going to hate my guts for the rest of our life. But that's it. That's really all.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the council regarding items that Rick can answer? All right, then these bills will be on the agenda for the next meeting. And now proceed with Bill 2930, which was on the agenda, again, a request for an indefinite postponement. So City Administrator, do you wish to explain your request?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In this case, we'll actually revise that. If we want to do a first reading tonight, that would be fine. This would just be more so a request for postponement. We had worked out the kind of the details of the legislation presented tonight with an agreement. That being said, Spectrum came back to us and said that they would just be baking in this agreement within the overarching agreement for the build out of itself. So in this case, we're hoping to see in the next couple of weeks an actual proposal for that next phase. So it'll be this cost that you see here within the direct budgetary impact would just be baked into the overall costs, and it's kind of separating itself out as requested initially by the city from that walkout, if you will. I can answer any questions as well.
All right, well then, can I get a motion for an indefinite postponement of? We didn't read it.
Oh, we didn't read it?
So at this point, you want to postpone till November? Is that your request? Okay, so is there someone on the council that would request postponement of Bill 2930 to November meeting? Councilmember Ottenberg, I saw your hand up. And a second by Councilmember Jaxi. Any other questions or comments? Then all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 And oppose or abstain. That motion passes. We do have two bills that I'm aware of, and I'll check to see if we have any others that are being requested for a second reading. Bill 2935 and 2936. And let me check with our city administrators. Any other bill that there is a request that's in the new business section?
Yeah, in this case, if we could, the department would not be opposed to having a second reading on bill number 2931. It was in reference to a bill from last month that was approved and became ordinance, but this is just more so it's cleaning up an insurance requirement.
Okay, so
Bill number 2931.
The request for bill 2931, 2935, and 2936. So those bills, is there a motion for the second reading of the bills? Made by Councilmember Farmer, Councilmember Preston with the second there. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstain. All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read bills.
Bill number 2931, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending ordinance number 2921 pertaining to the agreement with James G. Stat Tuck Pointing and Waterproofing Equipment, second reading. Bill number 2935, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement with Infrastructure Management Incorporated for construction of the Manchester Road and Taylor Road resurfacing and signal improvement project, including traffic control and other incidental items as shown on the construction drawings and specifications, second reading. Bill number 2936, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a supplemental agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for an increase in federal funding for construction of the Manchester Road and Taylor Road resurfacing and signal improvement project, second reading.
We have bills on the floor for discussion. Any discussion related to these bills? All right, seeing none then, Ms. Eldridge, please call a roll for final passage.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Councilmember Preston.
Yes.
Councilmember Mabry.
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember Crayons. Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Pass. On to the next section, first readings of favorable recommendations. We have Bill 2938 and so Bill 2939. So if there's no objection, see if we can read these in mass as well. All right, is there a motion for the first reading of bills 2938 and 2939? Made by Councilmember Galani, a second by Councilmember Nyan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, Ms. Eldridge, please read the bills.
Bill number 2938, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending ordinance number 2895 by adjusting certain building structure and parking setback distances to accommodate the redevelopment of the subject property to a sit-down restaurant, future microbrewery, and related accessory activities consistent with the Planning and Zoning Commission's letter of recommendation dated September 3rd, 2024, first reading. Bill number 2939, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending section 415.030 and 415.200 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood, Missouri by allowing a conditional use for self-service storages facilities inclusive of recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and similar items, consistent with the letter of recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated September 3rd, 2024, first reading.
Mr. Vudich, do you have anything to add to the information?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bill 2938 relates to Good News Brewing Company, and the public hearing was held tonight where there was discussion on the report from the Planning and Zoning Commission and presentation by one of the owners of the company. That owner also asked for a potential second reading tonight. This particular bill, again, just corrects an oversight relative to certain setbacks along West Avenue. Bill 2939 adds a new conditional use to the M1 Industrial District, and that new use would be self-service storage facilities inclusive of recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and similar items. Planning and Zoning Commission endorsed this particular matter by a unanimous vote. Public hearing was held on September 9. And at that public hearing, the city council authorized the preparation of this legislation.
Okay, we have these bills. Do we have any questions for Director Vunich? Councilmember Ottenberg.
Is it appropriate at this point for me to make a motion to have a second reading on both of these bills tonight?
I think as soon as we see if there's anything related to the other bill, any questions, and then we can come back to that. Anyone else have any questions or comments related to the bill? Okay, well
Thank
then, in that case, go ahead. You can go ahead and make the motion for the second reading of Bill 2938.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for the second reading of Bill 2938 and actually also 2939 tonight. If I can do them both at the same time.
All right, is that a department fine with 2939 or?
Mr. Mayor, the department has no objection. It wasn't expecting a second reading, but the bill is in the appropriate form for action.
Okay, let me check to see. So we have a motion being made. Looks like there is a second by Councilmember Preston. Then you're, again, just to clarify the motion, you're saying Bill 2938 and then Bill 2939.
That's correct.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for a second reading of the bills. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Ms. Eldridge, please read the bills.
Bill number 2938, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending ordinance number 2895 by adjusting certain building structure and parking setback distances to accommodate the redevelopment of the subject property to a sit-down restaurant, future microbrewery, and related accessory activities consistent with the Planning and Zoning Commission's letter of recommendation dated September 3rd, 2024, second reading. Bill number 2939, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending section 415.030 and 415.200 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood, Missouri by allowing a conditional use for self-service storages facilities inclusive of recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and similar items consistent with the letter of recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated September 3rd, 2024, second reading.
Okay, do we have any discussion on the bills? Final passage.
Councilmember Dodwell. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani. Councilmember Preston.
Yes.
Councilmember Mabry.
Yes.
Councilmember Nian.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember Crayons. Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Okay, bills pass. So moving on then into resolutions, we have several in the consent agenda. So you see that we do have several items within the consent agenda. And again, I'll ask if there's any item that anyone wishes to remove from the consent agenda. Otherwise, we will look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Hey, Councilmember Galani, is that a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second? Councilmember Nian, is that a second, or do you have a? Okay, let's. Okay, so if we could, we do have a request to remove the minutes from the consent agenda there. So Councilmember Galani, would you be fine with the
Yeah.
consent agenda except for the minutes there?
Sure.
Okay, so that is a motion made by Councilmember Galani. Is there a second? Made by Councilmember Farmer. So right now we have a motion on the floor for approval of the consent agenda. Do we have any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the motion passes. Then we'll come back to the approval of the September 9, 2024 work session and regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes? Made by Councilmember Farmer and seconded by Councilmember Marshall. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, we have one abstention. Okay, we have two abstentions, Councilmember Crayons and Nian, so the minutes are approved. Now we're in miscellaneous. Do we have anything that anyone wishes to speak towards in miscellaneous? Councilmember Edens.
Yeah, I just have a question based on City Administrator Lee's comments about the insurance earlier in the meeting. And this is based on, I've been meaning to bring this up, but an MML lecture that we attended on sovereign immunity, meaning our municipal sovereign immunity clause that the state, the powers that the state grants us, not citizens that may or may not believe that they're part of a sovereign nation. Separate. Okay. One of the recommendations that came out of the MML lecture was that anytime the administration of the city changes, that the city council approves another sovereign immunity, like as like renewed legislation essentially, because what they're saying is the person that signed it on the city's behalf has changed to like the mayor's changed. So I was wondering if we needed to do that. And they were also saying that we need to attach a rider for every single contract that we enter into with our own sovereign immunity clause added, because otherwise they said we're accepting the insurance cap that the company has, which may or may not exceed our own, depending on the circumstances.
I will talk to you all about that offline. if that's
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
All right, anything else under miscellaneous? So just a reminder, we will come back to the work session here. Councilmember Ottenberg.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Can you hold on just a moment? I do have one.
I can do that.
Special announcement. So a couple of things here. First, I do want to congratulate Councilmember Edens for completing the Missouri Municipal League's Advanced Certification Program for certified municipal officials. So congratulations, and I believe you may be the first in Wildwood history to get the advanced degree. So congratulations there. Now, the other announcement that I have to make regards the best golf carts at the Celebrate Wildwood event. So I know you've all been waiting for this one here. So, yes.
What's the cash surrender value of this prize?
Unfortunately, you only get bragging rights. So first, I do want to take a moment to celebrate Wildwood. It was just an incredible day. A lot of hard work went into the planning of that event. From the commission members, which Councilmember Edens is a co-chair of, and also the volunteers that worked at that event, and our staff here at the city, leading up to it and including that day, which was a bit warm, but they are up and ready for any kind of task. And so want to thank everyone that was able to join us, whether you were there physically or in spirit. It was a great day for our city to be able to celebrate it. So thanks to them. Let's just give a round of applause to our. Okay, so now I know this means a lot to some of you, but we do have golf carts that were judged as part of the parade to determine who the winners are. So I'm going to announce the third place. Let's see, best golf cart, or as it says, best float here, goes to Ward 5, Councilmember McCutcheon and Councilmember Marshall. So you have. Now, I don't know how you want to split this up. So they had a great cart there, and they had two trees there, a really nice theme into the parks that we have here. So now we'll go to second place here. This one's another good one too. I really love the kind of like that fall theme. So this second place goes to Ward 4. Councilmember Dodwell and Councilmember Farmer. So congratulations. All right, we're gonna pass this down. And then, of course, the one that we've all been waiting for, this one here, and I see former Councilmember Clark back there, who's worked hard in many of these events. We didn't have these for you.
No.
But the winner for first place, of course, goes to Ward 2, Councilmember Edens. And
Councilmember
Mabry.
Edens,
A lot of
Councilmember
Edens.
Edens.
Congratulations. All right, well, that's all I have there.
Competition was real. Yes. These few years, your former mayor was always like, and there's a competition, and there never was, so I didn't think it was a thing.
Well,
This is awesome.
We have now upgraded where you get a certificate. So Councilmember Galani and Rambo.
Ward 8 would like to file an appeal.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we handle this more like corporate golf scrambles and children's soccer tournaments where everybody gets a trophy. Because otherwise, Jaxie and I will never get one. And I also would like to suggest that Ms. Clark get an honorary plaque to hang on her wall because she has probably been neck and neck with Lauren for the last 4 years of awards, and she's never seen anything.
I heard a rumor she was quite influential in the Ward 1 golf tournament. So well, great to have this mention. Oh, it will give you an honorable mention to Ward 6. You always bring out the gator there.
We're interested in getting Teresa an actual prestigious award to proudly hang on her kitchen wall or something.
Councilmember Edens.
We can go into volunteer business as consultants for other golf carts in the future. So, and I was just going to say, just so you guys know, the big decorations that I did now live at the Daniel Boone Library for children's programming. And one of the previous years does as well. And so, if you have little kids or grandkids, you might be able to see them. And they also said they might get passed to other regional libraries for events. So Wildwood lives on with literacy.
Awesome.
Okay, well then, if there isn't anything else under miscellaneous, then we'll ask for an adjournment of our main meeting, and then we will resume our work session. Do we need a motion to reopen that work session, or is that just? Okay, so motion to close out the main meeting made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Okay, that meeting is now adjourned. And now we'll declare our work session open again. So just to ask you again, get your work session materials here. We'll get started. Okay, so back to the work session, we did have, we left off on item C, which is the Planning and Parks Committee Master Plan Update Process.
Mr. Mayor, and members of City Council, the original master plan was adopted in February 1996. And under the city's charter and state statute, that particular document needs to be updated every 10 years. The first update occurred in 2006. The second update occurred in 2016. And the third will need to be completed in 2026. To prepare for that, the Department of Planning and the Planning and Parks Committee have been considering the process, and a recommendation is being forwarded to you from the Planning and Parks Committee to form a citizens committee, which has been the standard practice over the last two updates. So tonight, the department is presenting the recommendation of the committee to City Council and seeking its endorsement.
All right, and you are looking for action on that, Director
Please.
Vunich? Okay. All right, motion made by Councilmember Edens and the second by Councilmember Dodwell. Have any questions for Director Vunich? All right, seeing none, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, that motion passes. We'll move on to the next item, which is the Wildwood Celebration Commission. There are two sub-items under that. So the first one, Director Vunich, for the budget for 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, a ordinance actually established the Wildwood Celebration Commission, and within that ordinance are regulations relating to the preparation of the budget for each year's event. That budget must be acted upon by the Wildwood Celebration Commission members in October and presented to the City Council before November. Tonight, the Wildwood Celebration Commission is presenting its proposed budget. That budget is for $95,000. That is a $5,000 increase over 2023. And the rationale for that $5,000 increase is that this is our 30th anniversary year, and there is anticipated to be a few additional expenses. So tonight, the department is respectfully requesting action on the proposed budget for the Wildwood Celebration Commission from the Wildwood Celebration Commission for fiscal year 2025.
Okay, is there anyone that wishes to make that motion? Councilmember Edens? Okay, is there a second on the motion there?
Can I
Okay.
get clarification on what the motion is?
Sure, believe that is to proceed with the department recommendation on the proposed budget.
Yes, the commission is recommending a budget for 2025 of $95,000.
Those who made the motion, your agreement with that? Okay, so any questions or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, that motion passes. We'll move on to the next item, the 2025 Celebrate Wildwood Event 30 by 30 Challenge.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, the Wildwood Celebration Commission has been considering the 30th anniversary and events to celebrate that special year in the city's history. One of those events has been the 30 by 30 Challenge. Tonight, the Wildwood Celebration Commission is presenting the 30 by 30 Challenge for endorsement by City Council.
Okay, do we have any questions for a motion to proceed then with that challenge there? Their motion made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second on that motion? Made by Councilmember Brost. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose or abstain? Right, that motion passes. So we'll move on to the next section, E, Department of Planning and Parks. The first item, the replacement of fencing with landscaping for Fairhaven subdivision. I do believe that is Ward 7, I believe. That's that. Is it?
Yes, I have Ward 7 on the report and Ward 8 in the agenda. So my apologies to both the City Council, Mayor, and City Clerk. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, when the Fairhaven subdivision was approved by City Council through the planning process, the city council added certain conditions relating to a site-proof fence along the Old State Road frontage. The desire was to screen the rear yards from Old State Road and create a better aesthetic. That fence has been in place for 27 years. The trustees of the subdivision contacted the city administrator and the Department of Planning and are requesting a consideration that would allow for a green fence landscaping to be installed along the common ground area of the development and retain the fence along the lots that have their rear yards abutting Old State Road. To do that change, the ordinance that approved Plat 1 of Fairhaven subdivisions would need to be amended. And so the department is respectfully requesting authorization to prepare a bill that would modify the fencing requirement as it is in place today.
Okay, do we have a motion regarding that item there? So Councilmember Kranz, and is there a second for the motion there made by Councilmember Dodwell? And again, to clarify, the motion that is assuming the department's recommendation there. Okay, any questions regarding that, Councilmember Mabry? Just the microphone.
I'll just leave it on. How's that? And then do this the whole time. This really is a carbon copy to me without having driven Old State for the meeting. Are there any private single-family residences with backyards backing up to Old State Road under this provision? If there is, I'll just say, if there is, I have grave concern that on a road that charmingly treacherous with those grades and blind curves and the type of traffic up and down it, a large concern identical to what was on Barrett Station Road over in Manchester. When I happened to enjoy working as a planning and zoning commissioner, that they wanted to put up shrubs or bushes or something and not a fence. And I just couldn't abide kids being able to play in their nice big backyards with nothing to keep them from running out in the road. And you can't legislate that only 5-year-olds and above can go outside in your backyard. So any kid could run out onto a road like Old State Road. And I don't know whether it's called a collector or an artery, but a road that much traveled needs a fence, even if it's a silly little 3-foot chain link fence, which I think is code. So that's my concern.
Councilmember Mabry, the trustees are proposing to retain the fence along those lots that have single-family detached dwellings on them. Their request is to remove the fence in their common ground area and replace it with a green fence, landscaping. The trustees have also agreed to use the city's arborist in the selection of the plantings, species, size, and assist with the determination of locations to make them most effective for screening and protection. And so from the department's perspective, the trustees are thinking safety as well, keeping the fence in place where homes are, but eliminating it in the common ground area, which is their stormwater retention facility.
Every single family dwelling will still have its requirement for a fence if the subdivision indentures call for every house to have a fence. That won't change.
Actually, the indentures did not require the fence. The
around their own residence, not around the common ground. But do you happen to know, just by trivia, whether or not the indentures call for a backyard fence for every single family dwelling around their own property?
No, the fence, it's kind of a lengthy story, but this was one of the last projects approved by St. Louis County prior to the incorporation. And St. Louis County did it in a very quick manner and didn't think about the aesthetics that would be associated with rear yards facing Old State Road. And so the city council, with the opportunity to approve the plats, added a requirement for the fencing as part of the authorization of the first 40 lots. It's kind of unusual to have a specific requirement like this as part of a bill for a plat. And so again, trustees want to retain the fence where there are homes and people, but amend the fence requirement on the common ground.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so therefore, looks like we, with that motion. You're looking for that, what your recommendation
Yes.
is, Director Bonich.
Please, Mr. Mayor, again, if respectfully, the department would request authorization to prepare a bill that would amend this condition as part of the original plating ordinance. And at that time, we'll guarantee that the question from Council Member Mayberry is addressed as well.
Is there someone that wishes to make a motion? Oh, we do have the motion? Okay, got it. So we have to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. So now we move on to miscellaneous, and we have three receive and file items.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the first of those is the approved site development plan and related components for Good News Brewing Company. And the department would note that the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission wasn't effective until such time the ordinance approving the new setbacks was approved by City Council, which occurred tonight. So the site development plan now is effective as well. The second item is the site development plan and related items for the mixed-use development that is planned at the intersection of Main Street and Taylor Road. That development includes commercial uses on the first floor facing Main Street and up to 189 units of multiple family type dwellings. Along with the multiple family development, there are four pickleball courts planned as well. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended and acted on each of these favorably, and they are both approved and being submitted to the City Council for receipt and filing. If there are any questions, the department would be glad to answer them.
Any questions related to those two items?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then the third item, City Administrator, you.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. In this case, this is just is a copy of the annual budget and the transmission of that annual budget from the Crossing Community Improvement District over across the street from here. That includes the parking garage, the fountain, Walgreens, the plaza that holds the Starbucks, and then catty cornered over there by the retirement home. In this case, each year, the budget has to be annually submitted before getting its ratification at the following meeting in November at that SID board meeting. And council members have until November 2nd to provide comment. That being said, the comments are just recommendations in this case, but you do have that opportunity. Should you have any comments, we'll take those tonight, or you can just shoot me an email and I can pass those over to the board. Thank you.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah. During our discussion, Mr. Boonage made the comment that he thought that money was being set aside yearly for any kind of maintenance that is needed. And you said you were going to look into that.
Yes. So in this case, with your permission, yes. So money has been set aside, but it's specifically for the garage. It's the garage sinking fund. And then there's approximately around $250,000. We would be utilizing almost the entirety of that with the $230,000 apportionment by the board that was done recently.
All right, seeing none, then we'll move forward. So we do have one item that we deferred earlier on. It's an executive closed session. So I'll ask for a motion regarding going into closed session according to RSMO 610.021 subsection 2. So is there a motion for that made by Councilmember Farmer and then seconded by Councilmember Marshall? And we do have to have a roll call for that item.
Councilmember Bruce. Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani. Councilmember Preston.
Yes.
Councilmember Mabry.
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember Krantz.
Okay, then we will proceed into the community room for our closed session, and we'll come back as soon as we get that done. Everyone, and at this point, we are at the point for adjournment, so can I get a motion to adjourn the work session? Made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second by Councilmember Ottenberg? All those in favor, please say aye.